Hello, today we're going to be talking about the basic structure of an argument. We're going to be writing our argument essay in this unit, so we need to just talk about some background basics to get started. Now, the first thing you're going to have to start a good argument is a thesis. Now, we've talked about a thesis statement before in terms of being the main point of your essay. When we talk about argument, we mean something even more specific than that. It's still serving as the main point, but specifically, a thesis is a debatable position with which reasonable people can and do disagree. As you will see in the assignment sheet, it goes beyond making a simple statement of fact. Something that's factually true is not a thesis. Okay? It has to be something that is debatable, it's controversial. Okay? And your sentence needs to be written in such a way that reasonable people can and do disagree with it. Not just the people who are ignorant on the topic, but rather educated, informed people have a disagreement on this topic. So you start with that, a thesis statement stating what your position is. From there, you have your first level of support, and those are reasons. Reasons that your thesis is true and should be believed. You can think of this in terms of the because test. You should be able to take your thesis, then think to yourself the word because, and then give the reasons following that word. Thesis because reason, reasons that the thesis is true. And there's no set number of reasons. I put 4 here just as an example to show you it doesn't have to be 3, which a lot of people think it does. It could be 2, it could be 3, 4, 5, etc. It could be 20. Just depends on what your topic is and how many reasons you have for the thesis being true. But you definitely want multiple reasons that the thesis is true. But that in and of itself is not enough. Okay, the thesis, being supported by the reasons, needs something else to complete the structure, and that is evidence. Evidence from research. We've already done research and talked about using it. We're going to continue to use it in this unit. But if you look at this, it's pretty squat, but I want you to think about this like a pyramid. With your thesis at the top, everything in your essay is building to supporting the thesis. Then you have your reasons that your thesis is true, and then evidence that your reasons are true. Okay, so it's, like I said, a slightly misshaped pyramid. But the whole idea is that everything supports, is underneath and building up to the thesis. Okay? Now, let's look at some examples just to see what this structure would look like in practice, because this is what you're going to be doing in your own essay. Let's say my thesis is the speed limit in Illinois should be 60 miles per hour. Do you think this is a good thesis? Hopefully no, because if you think about it, this would mean driving down McLean, outside of the school, driving down a school zone in front of an elementary school or a preschool. People should be able to drive 60 miles per hour. I don't think any reasonable person would make such a claim. So first of all, you got to make sure your thesis is specific to what it is you're arguing. Okay? A more reasonable thesis would be something like the speed limit on Illinois interstate highways should be 60 miles per hour. Okay, that's specific. It's logical about where you're driving. You would have a speed limit like that. Okay? So then you need to start thinking about what are the reasons that that's true. What are the reasons I can give to compel my reader? Now, first of all, keep in mind that I come up with reasons for this, which I'll show you in a moment. But people could also come up with reasons against it, because this is obviously debatable, because the current speed limit on most interstate highways is 70, or at least 65 on all of them. But let's look at some reasons why I might want to lower it to 60. Slower speeds are safer. Think of this follows the because test. The speed limit on Illinois highways should be 60 miles per hour because slower speeds are safer. Yep, structurally, that's a good reason. Now, of course, I would need to follow up with evidence to prove that slower speeds are safer. But if I can, that's a good reason. Another one, this speed is more fuel efficient for drivers. Okay? Once again, if I can show evidence that that's true, that's something that supports my thesis. But it's a different issue than safety. Right? You don't want just one issue, safety, to be the whole essay. You got to think about it from multiple perspectives to make the strongest possible argument, or the widest possible pyramid, the strongest support. Fuel and construction costs are lower for the government. I could explain how higher speeds lead to more damage to the road, meaning they have to give more construction to those areas, etc., etc. Okay? That's the type of thing I would explain in my paragraphs, because each of these reasons would be a body paragraph in my essay to support the thesis, which is in my intro. Finally, there are lower fuel emissions for the environment. This is a good set of reasons because it covers many different issues. It really applies to all types of readers and audiences that would be reading my essay. But looking at this, that may just seem obvious, that, oh, of course, that's how the argument works. Well, let me show you one that maybe isn't so logical so that you can see where you have to think about potential hang-ups on your argument. Let's say my argument is that people should be required to wear hats, because hats help keep sun out of the eyes, protecting irises, they protect health of hair, and they provide warmth in winter. Now, all three of these things are true, right? So does that mean that your thesis is true, that people should be required to wear hats? I would guess most of us would say no, that doesn't make sense, even though I have three good reasons for that. Let's look back to here. The speed limit on Illinois highways should be 60 miles per hour. Speed limits of roads are things that we agree that government should set. But most people are not comfortable with such a small issue, such as wearing hats or not wearing hats, being in the government's domain. You can see the easy reasons why. Whether or not somebody wears a hat is a personal preference that doesn't really impact other people, and it even doesn't impact the person wearing or not wearing the hat that much either. We're not talking about life and death, in other words. So that's another thing you got to think about with your essay. Even though, like in this case, we have two thesis statements about the government, forcing laws to protect people, you got to think about what's the most logical stance to take on something, whether something is going to an acceptable degree for your audience, which is something we'll talk about later. But just to end this unit, or this video, I want you to think about that basic argument structure again. Thesis, reasons, and evidence. This is something we're going to be utilizing throughout the rest of the unit to really write good, solid argument essays.